The flames had taken everything except her will to breathe. And as Josephine James stood watching what remained of her home collapse into ash and ember on that scorching August morning in 1876, she wondered if even that was worth keeping. The small ranch outside Tucson, Arizona Territory, had been her husband's dream, built with his own hands over 5 hard years. And now it was nothing more than blackened timber and shattered memories, reduced to ruin in a single night while she had been in town staying with her sister who had taken ill with fever. Samuel had been inside sleeping when the lantern fell, or so the neighbors told her when they found his body. 3 months of marriage, and now she stood a widow at 21 years old with nothing but the dress on her back and the wedding ring that had been returned to her by the undertaker. The livestock had scattered or perished. The barn had gone up like kindling, and even the old oak tree where they had carved their initials had been scorched beyond recognition. Josephine dropped to her knees in the dirt, her hands trembling as she sifted through what might have been the kitchen, finding nothing but twisted metal and ceramic shards. The August sun beat down mercilessly, and sweat mixed with tears on her face as she searched desperately for anything salvageable. There was nothing. The fire had been thorough in its destruction. "Madam, you should not be out here alone," a deep voice said from behind her, and Josephine spun around to see a tall man standing near what had been her front gate. He was in his mid-20s, broad-shouldered and weathered from years under the desert sun, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of strong coffee. He held his hat respectfully in his hands, revealing a face that was handsome in a rough, honest way. "This is my property," Josephine said, her voice hoarse from smoke and grief. "Or what remains of it." The man nodded slowly, his expression sympathetic but not pitying. "Name is Nathan Holloway. I have the ranch about 3 miles north. I saw the smoke yesterday evening and rode down with some neighbors, but we could not get close enough to save anything. I am sorry for your loss, madam. Samuel was a good man." Josephine's throat tightened. "You knew my husband. We traded horses a few times. He spoke of you often, said he had married the prettiest girl in Arizona Territory." Nathan looked at the ruins, his jaw tightening. "This is not right, what happened here. A man works his whole life to build something, and it is gone in an instant." "I have nothing," Josephine whispered, the reality of her situation crashing over her like a wave. "No home, no money, no livestock. Samuel kept our savings in a box under the floorboards because he did not trust banks." She laughed bitterly. "It is all ash now." Nathan was quiet for a moment, studying her with those dark eyes. Then he cleared his throat. "You have family in town, a sister, but she has 5 children and barely enough room for them in her small house. I cannot burden her further." Josephine stood up, brushing dirt from her skirt in a futile attempt to regain some dignity. "I will find work somewhere, perhaps as a seamstress or a cook. Or you could rebuild," Nathan said quietly. Josephine stared at him as if he had spoken in a foreign language. "Rebuild with what?" "I have nothing, Mr. Holloway. No lumber, no tools, no money for supplies. I cannot even afford nails." Nathan put his hat back on, tipping it against the sun. "I have lumber. Cut down a stand of ponderosa pine last year and it has been seasoning nicely. I have tools too, and I know how to use them. Built my own place from the ground up when I came out here 6 years ago." "I cannot pay you," Josephine said firmly, though hope flickered traitorously in her chest. "Did not ask for payment." Nathan looked at the ruins again, then back at her. "Your husband was a decent man. He helped me track down some stolen cattle 2 years back, would not take a cent for his trouble. Said neighbors help neighbors out here, because if we do not look after each other, no one else will." He paused. "Let me help you, Mrs. James. Not for payment, but because it is the right thing to do." Josephine wanted to refuse. Pride screamed at her to stand on her own, to not accept charity from a stranger, even one with kind eyes and a steady voice. But practicality won out over pride. She had nowhere to go, no way to start over without help, and winter would come eventually despite the current heat. Out here in the desert, you froze at night even in summer once the sun went down. "Why would you do this?" she asked, searching his face for any hint of ulterior motives. "You do not know me. We have never even met before today." Nathan shifted his weight, looking almost uncomfortable. "My parents died of cholera when I was 17, left me with my younger sister to raise and a failing farm back in Missouri. The neighbors came together, helped us harvest that year's crops, made sure we had food through the winter. Without them, we would have starved or lost the land to creditors." His voice grew softer. "I learned then that kindness is not something you repay to the person who gave it. You pass it forward to the next person who needs it. Your husband did that for me. Now I do it for you." Josephine felt tears prick her eyes again, but these were different from the tears of grief she had been shedding. "I do not know what to say. Say you will let me help." Nathan's expression was earnest. "I am not asking for anything in return, Mrs. James. Just the satisfaction of seeing this land built up again instead of abandoned. Good land is hard to come by out here, and Samuel chose well when he settled this plot. Water is close, soil is decent for growing, and you have enough grazing land for a small herd." "Where would I stay while the house is being rebuilt?" Josephine asked, practical concerns already spinning through her mind. "I cannot impose on my sister for months." Nathan frowned, clearly not having thought that far ahead. "There is a line shack on the eastern edge of my property that is not being used. It is small, just one room really, but it is sturdy and has a good stove. You could stay there. I would not bother you," he added quickly. "My house is a good mile away from it. You would have privacy and safety." It was not proper, a widow living on an unmarried man's property, but Josephine was past caring about propriety. Survival mattered more than scandal, and Nathan Holloway seemed genuine in his offer. She had always been a good judge of character, and every instinct told her this man was trustworthy. "All right," she said finally. "I accept your help, Mr. Holloway, and I will repay you somehow someday, even if you do not want payment." A smile crossed Nathan's weathered face, transforming it from merely handsome to genuinely warm. "Then we have an accord. Let me take you to the line shack now. You can get settled, and I will start clearing this debris tomorrow morning. Need to make sure all the embers are cold and see what, if anything, can be salvaged from the foundation." Josephine took one last look at the ruins of her brief marriage, said a silent goodbye to Samuel and the life they had planned together, and followed Nathan Holloway to his horse. He helped her up with careful hands, then swung up behind her, keeping a respectful distance as they rode north across the scrubland toward his property. The line shack turned out to be better than Josephine had expected. It was indeed small, perhaps 12 feet by 15 feet, but it had a real wood floor, solid walls chinked tightly against wind and weather, and a sturdy iron stove in one corner. There was a narrow bed with a thin mattress, a small table with 2 chairs, and even a few shelves on the wall. A window with real glass looked out toward the east, and the door had a working latch. "I will bring you some supplies," Nathan said, standing awkwardly in the doorway. "Food, blankets, lamp oil, anything else you need, just let me know." "You have done more than enough already," Josephine said, but Nathan shook his head. "Not nearly enough yet." He tipped his hat. "I will be back in a few hours. Try to rest, Mrs. James. You look exhausted." After he left, Josephine sat on the edge of the bed and finally allowed herself to truly break down. She cried for Samuel, for their lost future, for the home that was gone and the dreams that had died with him. She cried until she had no tears left, and then she washed her face in the basin of water Nathan had left, straightened her spine, and began to plan. She would rebuild. She would survive. And she would not waste the kindness Nathan Holloway was offering her. True to his word, Nathan returned 3 hours later with a loaded wagon. He brought flour, cornmeal, salt pork, dried beans, coffee, sugar, and even some fresh eggs carefully packed in straw. There were blankets, a pillow, soap, a hairbrush, and 2 simple dresses that he said had belonged to his sister before she married and moved to California. "They might be a bit long on you," he said, not quite meeting Josephine's eyes as he set the bundle on the table. "But they are clean and serviceable." Josephine touched the fabric, good sturdy cotton in a soft blue and a practical brown. "Your sister will not mind. She told me to give away anything she left behind. Said she was starting fresh with her new husband and did not need reminders of her old life." Nathan unloaded the last of the supplies. "I will come by in the morning. We will ride to your property and start making plans for the rebuild." That night, Josephine lay in the narrow bed wearing one of the borrowed dresses, listening to the coyotes howl in the distance. The desert was cooling rapidly as it always did after sundown, but the blankets Nathan had brought kept her warm. She thought about Samuel, about the way he had smiled at her on their wedding day, about the future they had planned. And then, feeling guilty but unable to stop herself, she thought about Nathan Holloway and his steady hands and kind eyes. She fell asleep telling herself that gratitude was not attraction, and that she was simply overwhelmed by his generosity. But her dreams told a different story. The next morning dawned clear and hot, as most August mornings did in the Arizona territory. Nathan arrived just after sunrise, leading a second horse for Josephine to ride. They made their way to her burned property in companionable silence, the only sounds the creak of saddle leather and the steady clip-clop of hooves on hard, packed earth. In daylight, the ruins looked even worse. Nathan walked the perimeter slowly, studying what remained of the foundation, poking at support beams with a stick to test their integrity. Josephine followed, trying not to look at the spot where Samuel's body had been found. "Foundation is mostly sound," Nathan said finally. "That is good. We can reuse it, which will save time and materials. The chimney is damaged but repairable. We will need to clear all this debris, see what can be salvaged." He pulled out a small notebook and a pencil stub, began sketching roughly. House was about 20 feet by 30 feet. 22 by 28, Josephine corrected. Samuel was very particular about the measurements. Nathan nodded, making notes. "We will rebuild to those specifications then. Respect what he built." He looked at her seriously. "This will take time, Mrs. James. Several months at least, working when I can between my own ranch duties. Longer if we hit any problems." "I understand." Josephine wrapped her arms around herself despite the heat. "I am in no position to rush you, Mr. Holloway. Any help is more than I deserve." "You deserve a home," Nathan said firmly. "Everyone does. Now let us start clearing. I brought tools." They worked side by side for hours, sorting through the wreckage. Most of it was ruined beyond salvage, but they found a few things. A cast iron pan that was warped but usable, some nails that could be straightened and reused, part of a mirror frame. Josephine found her mother's silver locket in what had been the bedroom, the metal tarnished but the photographs inside miraculously intact. She clutched it to her chest and cried while Nathan pretended not to notice, busying himself with loading charred wood into a wagon to be hauled away. By midday, they were both filthy and exhausted. Nathan had brought canteens of water and some bread and cheese, which they ate sitting on a relatively clean section of foundation wall. "Tell me about yourself," Josephine said suddenly. "If we are going to be working together for months, I should know more than just your name." Nathan took a long drink of water before answering. "Not much to tell. Born in Missouri, raised on a farm. Lost my parents to cholera in 1867. Raised my sister Katie for 3 years until she was old enough to manage on her own. Sold the farm in 1870 and came west looking for a fresh start. Bought land here, built a house and barn, started raising horses and cattle." He shrugged. "Quiet life, mostly. No wife, no children, just me and my livestock." "Why no wife?" Josephine asked, then immediately regretted the personal question. "I apologize, that was too forward." But Nathan did not seem offended. "Never found the right woman, I suppose. Came close once, girl named Mary back in Missouri. But she wanted to move to a big city and I wanted land and open sky. We parted ways amicably." He looked at Josephine. "What about you? How did you meet Samuel?" "My father had a shop in Tucson, sold dry goods. Samuel came in one day to buy supplies and we started talking. He was so enthusiastic about his plans for the ranch, so full of dreams." Josephine smiled sadly. "He courted me properly for 6 months, asked my father's permission, married me in the church. We had 3 months together before the fire." "I am sorry," Nathan said quietly. "So am I." Josephine stood up, brushing crumbs from her borrowed dress. "But sitting here feeling sorry for myself will not rebuild my house. What do we do next?" Nathan stood as well, a look of respect crossing his face. "Next, we finish clearing the debris, then we start planning the rebuild in earnest." They fell into a routine over the following weeks. Nathan would arrive at dawn. They would work on clearing the property until the heat became unbearable around midday, rest during the worst of the afternoon, then work again until sunset. Slowly, painstakingly, they cleared away all the burned remains and began preparing the foundation for new construction. Nathan brought his wagon load by load, hauling away debris and bringing in fresh materials. He had not exaggerated about his lumber supply. The seasoned ponderosa pine was beautiful, straight and strong, perfect for framing. He also brought stones for repairing the chimney, shingles for the roof, glass for windows. "This must be costing you a fortune," Josephine protested one evening as they surveyed another wagon load of supplies. "I told you the lumber was already cut. The rest is just bits and pieces I have been accumulating. Besides," Nathan added with a slight smile, "I am not doing this alone. You work as hard as any man I have ever hired." It was true. Josephine had thrown herself into the work with fierce determination. She hauled water, mixed mortar, held boards steady while Nathan hammered, and learned how to handle tools she had never touched before. Her hands blistered, then calloused. Her arms and back ached every night. But she felt strong in a way she never had before, capable and useful. As September arrived and the brutal heat began to ease slightly, the frame of the house started to take shape. It was thrilling to see walls rising where there had been only ash and ruin. Nathan proved to be a skilled carpenter, measuring twice and cutting once, fitting pieces together with precision. Josephine watched him work, admiring his patience and craftsmanship. They talked while they worked, conversations that ranged from practical matters to personal stories. Nathan told her about his childhood, about learning to ride before he could walk, about the year the crops failed, and his family survived on little more than hope and determination. Josephine shared memories of her own childhood, of helping in her father's shop, of learning to sew from her mother, of the quiet dreams she had harbored before marriage. "I wanted to be a teacher," she admitted one afternoon while they were taking a water break. "Before Samuel. I loved books and learning, thought about applying to the schoolhouse in Tucson. Why did you not? Nathan asked, genuinely curious. Josephine shrugged. Samuel asked me to marry him, and that seemed more important at the time. You did not say no to a good man with prospects when you were 20 years old with no fortune of your own. She paused. I loved him. I want to be clear about that. It was not just practical. But I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had waited, pursued teaching first. You could still do that, Nathan pointed out. Once you have your house back and are settled, Tucson is growing, they will need teachers. The thought had not occurred to Josephine, but once Nathan said it, it planted itself in her mind like a seed. Perhaps she could have a different future than the one she had imagined. Perhaps loss did not mean the end of all dreams. As the weeks passed, Josephine found herself looking forward to Nathan's arrival each morning with an eagerness that had nothing to do with the house and everything to do with the man himself. She noticed little things: the way he pushed his hair back when he was concentrating, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the sound of his laugh when she said something amusing. She noticed how gentle his hands were despite their calluses, how he never raised his voice even when something went wrong, how he treated her as an equal partner in the work rather than a helpless woman to be coddled. One evening in late September, they were working by lamplight to finish installing a window frame before the next day's forecasted rain. Nathan was on a ladder outside while Josephine held the frame steady from inside. Their hands touched as they maneuvered the heavy wood into place, and Josephine felt something electric pass between them. Got it, Nathan said, his voice slightly rough. He drove the final nails quickly, then climbed down from the ladder. When he came inside to inspect the work, he stood very close to Josephine in the growing darkness, close enough that she could smell sawdust and sun on his skin. Mrs. James, he began, then stopped. Josephine. It was the first time he had used her given name, and it sent a shiver through her despite the warm evening air. Yes, I need to tell you something, Nathan said, then fell silent, seeming to struggle with words. Finally, he just shook his head. Never mind, it is late. I should go. Nathan, Josephine said, using his first name deliberately. When he turned back, she stepped closer. What did you want to tell me? For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Then Nathan reached out slowly, giving her plenty of time to step back, and touched her cheek with his calloused hand. I wanted to tell you that these past 2 months have been the best I have had in years, that I wake up looking forward to seeing you. That you are the bravest, strongest woman I have ever met. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. That I am falling in love with you, and I know it is too soon and probably wrong, but I cannot help it. Josephine's breath caught. She should have been shocked, should have stepped back and reminded him that she was still in mourning, that it had only been 2 months since she became a widow. But instead, she covered his hand with her own and said, It is not wrong, and it is not too soon because I feel the same way. Nathan exhaled shakily. Josephine, I do not want to dishonor Samuel's memory or rush you into anything. I know you loved him. I did love him, Josephine agreed, and I will always carry those memories. But Samuel is gone and I am still here. And you have shown me more kindness in 2 months than most people show in a lifetime. She paused, making sure of her own feelings before continuing. What I feel for you is different from what I felt for Samuel. It is built on partnership and respect and shared work. It has grown slowly, like the house we are building together, and I think it could become something wonderful if we let it. Nathan pulled her closer, resting his forehead against hers. Are you sure? I do not want you to feel obligated because I helped you. I am sure, Josephine said firmly. This has nothing to do with obligation. It has to do with the way my heart beats faster when I see you riding up in the morning. The way I find myself watching you work and admiring not just what you do but who you are. The way I feel safe and strong and valued when I am with you." That was when Nathan kissed her, gentle and careful, asking rather than taking. Josephine kissed him back, her hands coming up to rest on his shoulders, and for the first time since the fire, she felt truly alive rather than just surviving. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. Nathan stepped back, running a hand through his hair. "I should court you properly. Ask permission, bring you flowers, do this right." Josephine laughed, though tears were streaming down her face. "Nathan, we have been working side by side every day for 2 months. We have built a house together. I think we are past traditional courtship." "Still," Nathan insisted, "I want to do this right. You deserve that." So began the strangest courtship Josephine had ever heard of. They continued working on the house during the day, but now Nathan would bring her wildflowers he had picked on his morning ride. They would sit together during their midday rest, talking about their hopes for the future. In the evenings, Nathan would walk her back to the line shack, and they would sit outside watching the sunset before he rode home. The house progressed steadily. By October, the walls were up and the roof was on. They installed the door and all the windows, repaired the chimney, built a new front porch. Inside, they constructed walls to divide the space into a bedroom, a main room, and a kitchen area. Nathan showed Josephine how to mix plaster for the interior walls, how to hang a door properly, how to install shelving. One afternoon, while they were taking a break, Josephine said, "I never thanked you properly, for all of this." Nathan looked up from the piece of wood he was sanding. "You thank me every day, Josephine. You do not need to say it, but I want to say it anyway." Josephine set down the brush she had been using to paint a window frame. "When I stood in those ruins in August, I thought my life was over. I saw no path forward, no hope. And then you appeared and offered to help a stranger for no reason except kindness." Her voice trembled. "You gave me back my home, but more than that, you gave me back my future. You showed me that life goes on, that good things can rise from ashes, that I am stronger than I thought I was." Nathan put down his sanding block and crossed to where she stood. "You were always that strong, Josephine. I just gave you the tools and materials. You did the real work." "We did it together," Josephine corrected. "That is what makes it special." As October faded into November and the nights grew genuinely cold, the house neared completion. They finished the interior walls, installed the kitchen stove that Nathan had ordered from Tucson, built cabinets and a table and chairs. Nathan even carved a headboard for the bed, working on it in secret at his own ranch and presenting it to Josephine one evening. "It is beautiful," she whispered, running her fingers over the simple but elegant design. "Nathan, you did not have to do this." "I wanted to," he said simply. "Every home needs furniture, and I wanted you to have something special, something that was made just for you." On a mild afternoon in mid-November, they stood together outside the completed house, looking at what they had built. It was not fancy, but it was solid and well-made, a home that would stand against weather and time. The walls were straight, the roof was tight, the windows fit perfectly in their frames. Inside, everything was clean and ready for occupation. "I do not want to move in alone," Josephine said suddenly. Nathan turned to look at her, surprise and hope warring on his face. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that this house was built by two people working together. It should be lived in by two people together." Josephine took his hand. "Marry me, Nathan Holloway. Not because you helped me or because I owe you, but because I love you and I cannot imagine my life without you in it." Nathan's smile was brilliant. "You are supposed to wait for the man to propose, Josephine James." "I got tired of waiting," Josephine shot back, but she was smiling too. Then yes, Nathan said, pulling her close. Yes, I will marry you. I have wanted to ask you for weeks, but thought it was too soon, that people would talk. Let them talk, Josephine said firmly. We know the truth of what we feel. They were married 3 weeks later in the church in Tucson, with Josephine's sister and her family in attendance, along with several of Nathan's friends and neighbors. Josephine wore a new dress, paid for with money she had earned doing sewing work for ladies in town. It was simple but pretty, a soft green that Nathan said brought out her eyes. The ceremony was short and sweet, and when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Nathan kissed her like she was the most precious thing in the world. The congregation cheered, and Josephine felt joy bubble up inside her like a spring. The wedding breakfast was held at her sister's house, crowded and noisy with children running underfoot and neighbors bringing food to share. Nathan never left Josephine's side, his hand always finding hers, his eyes constantly seeking her out across the room. You look happy, Josephine's sister Margaret said, cornering her in the kitchen. Truly happy, not just making the best of things. I am happy, Josephine confirmed. Nathan is a good man, Margaret. He makes me feel valued and strong. He is lucky to have you too, Margaret said firmly. You have been through hell and come out stronger. Any man would be fortunate to call you his wife. That evening, Nathan drove Josephine back to what was now their home, the house they had built together brick by brick, board by board. He had been there earlier in the day preparing a surprise, and when they walked through the door, Josephine gasped. The main room was filled with lamplight and warmth from the stove. Nathan had brought over furniture from his own house, comfortable chairs, a beautiful rug, even a small bookshelf that he said needed filling. There were wildflowers in a vase on the table, and the bed in the bedroom was made up with a new quilt that Josephine recognized as Margaret's handiwork. When did you do all this? Josephine asked, turning in a slow circle to take it all in. This afternoon, while you were getting ready at your sister's. Nathan pulled her close. I wanted our first night here to be special, wanted you to feel like this is truly a home, not just a house. It is home because you are in it, Josephine said, reaching up to cup his face in her hands. The building does not matter without you. That night, they consummated their marriage in the house they had built together, and Josephine felt complete in a way she had not known was possible. This was different from her wedding night with Samuel, which had been awkward and rushed. With Nathan, everything felt natural and right, a partnership of equals sharing joy and pleasure. Afterward, lying in Nathan's arms with the quilt pulled over them against the chill, Josephine said, Tell me about your plans for this place. Nathan traced lazy patterns on her shoulder. What do you want to do with it? It is your land, Josephine. Your decision. Our land now, Josephine corrected. We are married. Everything is shared. She thought for a moment. I want to raise horses. Samuel had talked about it before he died, said this land was perfect for it. And I remember you mentioning that you raise horses on your property. I do, Nathan confirmed. Have about 20 head right now, mostly mares and a good stallion. Some people think horses are harder than cattle, but I find them more rewarding, smarter, more personality. Could we combine our operations? Josephine asked. Run both ranches as one unit. Nathan propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her with interest. That is actually smart business. Your land has that good water source and mine has better grazing in the winter. Together, we would have enough range to support a larger herd. He paused. But I do not want you to feel like I am taking over what is yours. This is your property, your fresh start. And you helped me build it from nothing, Josephine pointed out. You have as much right to it as I do, more maybe, since you provided all the materials and expertise. No, Nathan said firmly. The materials were just wood and nails. You provided the courage and determination. This house stands because you refused to give up." He kissed her softly. "But if you want to combine our operations, I think that is an excellent idea. We can move my horses here, use my property as additional grazing land, build this into something substantial." They talked late into the night, making plans for the future. They would start small, building up their horse herd gradually. Josephine wanted to focus on raising good working horses for ranchers and the cavalry, animals that were sturdy and reliable rather than fancy. Nathan agreed, saying there was always demand for dependable mounts. "And I still want to teach," Josephine added. "Not right away, but eventually. Maybe in a few years when we are more established." "Then you will teach," Nathan said simply. "We will make it work." Life settled into a comfortable rhythm over the winter months. Nathan moved his belongings and his horses to what they now called the James Holloway Ranch, a combination of both their names. They rose early each morning to tend the animals, spent their days working on various ranch tasks, and their evenings together by the fire, talking and planning and simply enjoying each other's company. Nathan taught Josephine how to work with horses, how to read their body language and earn their trust. She proved to have a natural gift for it, calm and patient where others might be harsh. The horses responded to her gentle touch, and soon she was helping Nathan train the younger animals. In turn, Josephine taught Nathan things her father had taught her about bookkeeping and business. She set up a proper ledger system for tracking their expenses and income, organized their paperwork, and even negotiated a better price with the feed supplier in Tucson by pointing out they were now one of his largest customers. "You are good at this," Nathan said one evening, watching her work on the books. "Better than me. I always just kept rough track in my head. My father always said a business stands or falls based on its records," Josephine replied, making a careful notation. "If you do not know exactly where you stand financially, you cannot make good decisions." By spring, they had expanded their herd to 30 horses, including several promising foals. Word spread that the James Holloway Ranch produced quality animals, and buyers started coming from as far as Phoenix and even New Mexico territory. Nathan's reputation as a horseman combined with Josephine's business sense made them a formidable team. On a warm April evening, Josephine sat on the porch watching Nathan work with a young gelding in the corral. The horse was skittish, but Nathan was patient, using his voice and body language to communicate rather than force. Gradually, the animal calmed, accepting Nathan's presence and eventually his touch. Josephine felt a familiar flutter in her stomach and smiled. She had suspected for a few weeks now, but had wanted to be certain before saying anything. Now, watching her husband work the horse with such gentle competence, she knew it was time. When Nathan finished and came to the porch to wash up, Josephine stood and wrapped her arms around him from behind. "I have news." Nathan turned, concern immediately crossing his face. "What is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong," Josephine assured him quickly. "Everything is right. Nathan, we are going to have a baby." For a moment, Nathan just stared at her, processing the words. Then his face broke into the widest smile Josephine had ever seen. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing. "A baby." "Truly?" "Truly," Josephine confirmed, laughing too. "I estimate sometime in early November if my calculations are correct." Nathan set her down carefully, suddenly treating her like she was made of glass. "You should sit down. Should you have been working so hard? Is there anything you need?" "Nathan," Josephine said, touching his face gently. "I am pregnant, not ill. I can still do everything I have been doing, at least for several more months. Women have babies all the time while running ranches. But Nathan was already planning. We should add on to the house." Build another room for the baby, and we need a cradle. I can make one, carve it special." He paused. "Are you happy about this, Josephine? I know it is fast. We have only been married 6 months." "I am thrilled," Josephine said honestly. "I want children with you, Nathan. I want to build a family in this house we built together. I want our children to grow up riding horses and learning the value of hard work and seeing what two people can accomplish when they work as partners." Nathan pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. "I love you so much it scares me sometimes. The thought of something happening to you or the baby." "Nothing will happen," Josephine said firmly. "I am strong and healthy, and Margaret has delivered 5 babies successfully. She will help when the time comes." True to his word, Nathan began building a nursery addition to the house. He worked on it in the evenings and early mornings, determined to have it finished well before the baby's arrival. Josephine helped when she could, though Nathan increasingly tried to keep her from anything strenuous. "I am not an invalid," she protested one afternoon when he insisted she rest instead of helping lift a beam. "I know," Nathan said, guiding her to a chair. "But you are carrying our child, and I will not risk either of you. Please, Josephine, let me do this. Let me take care of you the way you deserve." Josephine relented, secretly touched by his concern. She spent her energy instead on preparing for the baby in other ways, sewing tiny clothes, knitting blankets, organizing supplies. Margaret came out to visit regularly, offering advice and hand-me-downs from her own children. Summer passed peacefully. The ranch prospered, with several major sales that boosted their savings considerably. Nathan finished the nursery and carved a beautiful cradle from cherry wood, decorating it with images of horses and desert flowers. Josephine made curtains and a small quilt, spending warm afternoons sewing on the porch while Nathan worked nearby. As November approached and Josephine grew round with pregnancy, Nathan became increasingly anxious. He checked on her constantly, worried about every twinge and discomfort. Josephine found it endearing even when it was annoying. "The baby will come when it is ready," she assured him for the 100th time. "You cannot rush these things." On November 7th, 2 days past the date Josephine had calculated, she woke Nathan before dawn. "It is time." Nathan shot out of bed like he had been launched, scrambling for his boots and pants. "I will get Margaret. Do not move. Should you lie down, stand up. What do you need?" Despite the growing contractions, Josephine laughed. "I need you to calm down before you hurt yourself. Yes, go get Margaret. I will start timing the pains." Nathan rode to town faster than he had ever ridden in his life, pounding on Margaret's door before the sun was fully up. Margaret took one look at his panicked face and started gathering her supplies. "How close are the pains?" she asked calmly. "I do not know. I came straight here," Nathan admitted. "Should I have timed them?" "What if something is wrong?" "Nathan, breathe," Margaret ordered. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. Josephine is strong and healthy. Everything will be fine." The ride back seemed to take forever. When they finally arrived at the ranch, they found Josephine calmly walking laps around the main room, one hand on her lower back. "About every 10 minutes," she reported. "I think we have some time yet." She was right. It was a long labor, lasting through the morning and into the afternoon. Nathan stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her face with cool cloths, offering words of encouragement. Margaret worked efficiently, checking progress and offering guidance. Finally, as the sun was beginning to set, Margaret said, "Next contraction, push hard." Josephine bore down with all her strength, and moments later the room filled with the sound of a baby's cry. Nathan felt tears streaming down his face as Margaret held up a squalling, red-faced infant. "It is a boy," Margaret announced with a smile. "A healthy boy with good lungs." She cleaned the baby quickly and wrapped him in a blanket before placing him in Josephine's arms. Josephine looked down at her son, at his tiny, perfect features and shock of dark hair, and felt love so intense it was almost painful. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "Welcome to the world." Nathan leaned over them both, touching the baby's impossibly small hand with one finger. The infant immediately grasped it, holding on with surprising strength. "He is perfect," Nathan said, his voice choked with emotion. "Josephine, you are amazing. He is amazing. I cannot believe we made this." They named him Samuel Nathan, honoring both the man who had first claimed this land and the man who had rebuilt it. Little Sam was a healthy, hungry baby who demanded attention at all hours but rewarded them with precious smiles and milestone moments. Nathan proved to be a devoted father, walking the floor with Sam when he was fussy, changing diapers without complaint, sitting for hours just watching his son sleep. Josephine watched her husband fall completely in love with their child, and her own love for Nathan deepened seeing him embrace fatherhood so wholeheartedly. Winter passed with new routines built around the baby's needs. The ranch work continued, though Nathan now did more of the physical labor while Josephine managed the books and handled Sam. Margaret visited regularly, delighted to have another nephew to spoil. Spring came, bringing new foals and new growth. Sam was crawling by then, getting into everything with enthusiastic curiosity. Nathan baby-proofed the house as best he could, but the boy was determined to explore every corner of his world. "He is going to be a handful," Josephine predicted, rescuing Sam from attempting to climb into the kindling box for the third time that day. "Good," Nathan said, scooping up his son and tossing him gently in the air, eliciting delighted giggles. "Life should be an adventure." One evening when Sam was about 8 months old, Josephine stood on the porch watching Nathan play with their son in the yard. The house she had thought lost forever stood solid behind her. The ranch she had thought impossible thrived around her. And the family she had thought she would never have filled her heart to bursting. She thought about that terrible morning almost 2 years ago, standing in the ashes of her first home, believing her life was over. She thought about Nathan appearing like an answer to a prayer she had not known how to make, offering help without expecting anything in return. She thought about building this house together, falling in love while laying each brick, creating something permanent from ruins. Margaret's voice interrupted her thoughts. "Penny for them?" Josephine turned to see her sister coming up the porch steps, a basket in hand. "Just thinking about how much can change in 2 years." "You have built a good life here," Margaret said, setting down the basket and pulling out a pie. "Apple, fresh this morning. And before you say anything, it is not charity. You gave me eggs and butter last week, so we are even." Josephine smiled. "Thank you, Margaret, for everything. I do not think I could have gotten through those first months without you." "That is what family does," Margaret said simply. "We show up for each other." She paused. "Are you truly happy, Joe, with Nathan, with the ranch, with all of this?" "I am happier than I ever thought possible," Josephine answered honestly. "Is that wrong? Should I feel guilty for being so content when Samuel is gone?" "Absolutely not," Margaret said firmly. "Samuel would not want you to mourn forever. He would want you to live, to thrive, to find joy again. And you have. There is no shame in that." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching Nathan and Sam in the yard. Sam was toddling now, taking unsteady steps before falling on his diapered bottom. Nathan was right there, encouraging him to try again, celebrating each successful step. "He is a good man," Margaret observed. "And a wonderful father. You chose well." "I am not sure I chose," Josephine said. "I think we found each other at exactly the right moment. If Nathan had arrived at my property a week earlier or a week later, everything might have been different." "Then thank heaven for perfect timing," Margaret said. As the months and years passed, the James Holloway ranch continued to grow and prosper. They expanded the horse operation, building additional corrals and a larger barn. Nathan's reputation as a skilled horseman spread, and they began training animals for specific purposes: cutting horses for ranchers, cavalry mounts for the military, reliable riding horses for families. Josephine eventually started teaching, first tutoring the children of neighboring ranches who lived too far from town to attend regular school. She held classes twice a week in their main room, teaching rating, writing, and arithmetic to a rotating group of students. The parents paid when they could, sometimes in cash but often in goods or services. Josephine did not mind. She loved teaching, loved seeing young minds engage with new ideas. Sam grew into an active, curious toddler and then a rambunctious young boy. He learned to ride almost before he could walk properly, taking to horses with a natural ease that delighted Nathan. By age 4, Sam was helping with simple ranch chores, collecting eggs from the chickens they had acquired and filling water buckets for the horses. When Sam was 5, Josephine discovered she was pregnant again. This time she recognized the signs immediately and she told Nathan right away. His reaction was just as joyful as before, though tempered with experience. "Boy or girl?" he asked, hand on her still flat stomach. "I think a girl this time," Josephine said. "A daughter to balance out our son." She was right. Their daughter, Catherine Rose, was born in April 1882, a surprisingly easy birth that lasted only 4 hours. Katie, as they called her, had Josephine's lighter hair and Nathan's dark eyes. She was a calm baby compared to her brother, content to observe the world with steady attention. Sam was fascinated by his baby sister, constantly wanting to help with her care. Nathan supervised carefully, but Sam proved surprisingly gentle with the tiny infant. He would sit next to Josephine while she nursed, telling Katie stories about the horses and the ranch in his 5-year-old way. "You will like the horses," Sam told his sister seriously. "Papa says they are the smartest animals, and Mama teaches rating, which is almost as important as horses." But not quite. Nathan caught Josephine's eye over Sam's head, both of them smiling at their son's earnest declaration. Life settled into a new rhythm with 4 instead of 3. The ranch continued to demand attention, but they managed it together, a true partnership in every sense. Nathan still did most of the physical training and breaking of horses, but Josephine had become skilled at initial gentling and building trust with skittish animals. She would spend hours in the corral with a new horse, using her patient, calm presence to help them overcome fear. Sam started helping more as he got older, learning from his father how to read a horse's mood, how to move in ways that communicated safety rather than threat. By age 7, he was helping with basic training, and Nathan beamed with pride watching his son work. Katie proved to be just as horse-crazy as her brother, but in a different way. Where Sam loved the action and challenge of training, Katie loved simply being near the animals. She would sit in the corral for hours, a book in her lap while horses grazed nearby. They seemed drawn to her quiet presence, often coming over to investigate this small human who asked nothing of them. "She has a gift," Nathan observed one afternoon, watching 5-year-old Katie sitting peacefully while a usually standoffish mare nuzzled her shoulder. "Animals sense something in her." "She has your calmness and my patience," Josephine said. "A good combination." The ranch continued to prosper. By 1885, they had over 50 horses and a solid reputation across the territory. They employed 2 part-time hands to help with the work, young men from town who were learning the trade. Nathan was a patient teacher, sharing his knowledge freely. Josephine expanded her teaching operation, building a small schoolhouse on their property with money saved from horse sales. She now taught 15 students regularly, children from ranches within a 10-mile radius. Parents dropped them off Monday through Thursday, and Josephine gave them a solid education in reading, writing, arithmetic, history, and even some basic science. "You have created something special here," Margaret told her during a visit. "These children would not have any schooling otherwise. You are giving them opportunities they would never have had." "It is what I always wanted to do," Josephine replied, watching her students through the schoolhouse window. "Make a difference, open up the world through books and learning." As Sam approached his 10th birthday, Nathan began teaching him more advanced horsemanship and ranch management. Sam was ready for it, eager to learn and surprisingly mature for his age. Nathan made sure to explain not just how to do things but why, giving Sam the reasoning behind decisions. "Someday this will all be yours," Nathan told his son one evening as they walked the property line together. "Yours and Katie's. Your mother and I are building this for you, creating something that will last." "I will take care of it, Papa," Sam promised seriously. "I will make you proud." "You already do, son," Nathan assured him. Every single day, Katie, meanwhile, developed her own interests. She loved her mother's teaching, spending hours reading and asking endless questions about the world beyond their ranch. But she also had her father's practical skills, learning to mend tack and rope a fence post and read the weather in cloud formations. On their 10th wedding anniversary in December 1887, Nathan surprised Josephine with a carved wooden sign for the ranch entrance. It read, "James Holloway Ranch, established 1876, with images of horses carved into the corners." "Established 1876?" Josephine questioned. "The house was not even built until late that year. But the land was yours before the fire," Nathan pointed out. "Samuel established it in 1875 when he first built. The fire did not erase that history. We honor it by acknowledging he was here first." Josephine felt tears prick her eyes. Even after a decade together, Nathan still found ways to show respect for her past while building their future. "You are remarkable, do you know that?" "I married a remarkable woman," Nathan replied. "It inspired me to be better." That night, after the children were asleep, they sat together on the porch despite the December chill, wrapped in a blanket and watching stars wheel overhead. It was something they did regularly, stealing quiet moments together in the midst of busy lives. "You remember the day we met?" Josephine asked, nestled against Nathan's shoulder. "Every detail," Nathan confirmed. "You were standing in the ruins looking lost and determined at the same time. I thought you were the bravest person I had ever seen." "I did not feel brave. I felt terrified." "Bravery is not the absence of fear," Nathan said. "It is moving forward despite being afraid. You did that. You stood in those ashes and decided to rebuild rather than surrender." "We rebuilt together," Josephine corrected. "I could not have done it alone." "Maybe not," Nathan acknowledged. "But you were willing to try. That is what mattered." Josephine turned to look at her husband, this man who had appeared at her lowest moment and helped her rise. His hair had more gray now at almost 40 years old, and there were deeper lines around his eyes from years squinting against the sun. But he was still the same steady, kind person who had offered help to a stranger without expecting anything in return. "I love you," she said simply. "More now than even on our wedding day. Is that possible?" "It is not only possible, it is natural," Nathan said, kissing her softly. "Love grows when you tend it, like anything worth having. We have tended ours well." As the 1880s faded into the 1890s, the James Holloway Ranch became an established institution in the region. They were known for quality horses, fair dealing, and generous community involvement. Nathan served on the local Ranchers Association, helping settle disputes and organize cooperative efforts. Josephine's school continued to thrive, and she began advocating for a formal schoolhouse in Tucson that would serve all children regardless of their ability to pay. Sam grew into a capable young man, taking on more responsibility with each passing year. By 16, he was handling much of the daily ranch work himself, freeing Nathan to focus on training and sales. Katie, at 14, was helping her mother teach while also developing a particular skill with young horses that surprised everyone. "She can do things with a green horse that take me weeks to accomplish," Nathan told Josephine one evening, watching Katie work with a skittish 2-year-old filly. "She has something I have never seen before, an instinct that cannot be taught." Josephine smiled. "Both our children are extraordinary. We are very blessed." "We are," Nathan agreed, "though I think the blessing started long before the children. It started the day I decided to ride down to your property and offer help." "The best decision you ever made," Josephine teased. "Without question," Nathan said seriously. "Everything good in my life stems from that choice." In 1893, when Josephine was 38 and Nathan 45, they received unexpected news. Josephine was pregnant again. After 11 years with no pregnancies, they had assumed they were done having children. The news was both exciting and slightly daunting. "I am not a young woman anymore," Josephine said, one hand on her stomach. "There are more risks at my age." "Then we will be extra careful," Nathan said firmly. "And Margaret will help. We will get through this together just like we have gotten through everything." The pregnancy was harder than her previous two. Josephine was often exhausted and dealt with complications that required weeks of bed rest. Nathan took over managing the school temporarily, following Josephine's lesson plans, and doing his best to teach reading and arithmetic to 15 energetic students. Sam and Katie stepped up as well, handling more household chores and ranch work without complaint. In January 1894, Josephine gave birth to twin boys. The labor was difficult and frightening, lasting nearly 24 hours. But Margaret was there, experienced and calm, guiding Josephine through it. When it was finally over, Nathan held his 2 new sons and cried with relief and joy. "James and Lucas," Josephine named them, "for my father and yours." The twins were healthy despite their dramatic entrance, 2 dark-haired boys who looked remarkably similar. Sam and Katie were fascinated by their baby brothers, and the house suddenly seemed much smaller with 6 people living in it. "We need to expand again," Nathan said one evening, surveying the crowded main room. "Add on another bedroom at minimum, maybe enlarge the kitchen." "Or," Josephine suggested, "we could start building a second house on the property for when Sam is ready to marry and have his own family. Keep this one for us and the younger children." Nathan looked at her with admiration. "Always thinking ahead. I like it." "We start planning now, build it over the next few years so it is ready when Sam needs it." So they began another building project, this time with Sam's full participation. They chose a spot about a quarter-mile from the main house, near a grove of cottonwood trees that provided shade. Nathan taught Sam proper building techniques, the same lessons he had learned through trial and error years before. "You measure twice and cut once," Nathan instructed. "You never rush, because mistakes cost time and materials. And you always think about the person who will live here, what they need, how the space will serve them." Sam absorbed it all, working alongside his father with steady determination. Katie helped too when she was not needed at the school or with the horses. Even at 14, She was strong enough to hammer nails and lift boards. The twin boys grew quickly, developing distinct personalities despite their identical appearance. James was the quieter of the two, content to observe and think before acting. Lucas was all energy and impulse, constantly getting into mischief that James would then have to help him escape from. By 1896, Sam was 19, and the new house was nearly complete. He had been courting a girl from Tucson, Maria Sanchez, whose father owned the general store. She was a sweet-natured young woman with practical skills and a good head for business. When Sam brought her to meet his parents, Josephine liked her immediately. "She will be a good partner for you," Josephine told Sam after Maria had returned to town. "She has intelligence and kindness, which matters more than beauty, though she has that too." "I want to ask her to marry me," Sam admitted, "but I worry it is too soon. We have only been courting for 8 months. "Your father and I built a house together before we married," Josephine said with a smile. "Sometimes you just know when something is right. If Maria is willing and her father approves, then follow your heart." Sam proposed that spring, and Maria accepted. They were married in June in a simple ceremony in Tucson, and Maria moved to the ranch, bringing with her a dowry of practical household goods and a cheerful disposition. She took to ranch life easily, proving capable with both domestic duties and outdoor work. Nathan and Josephine officially gifted the new house to Sam and Maria as a wedding present, keeping the original house for themselves and their younger children. It felt right, completing a circle that had started 20 years earlier when Nathan had helped Josephine rebuild from ashes. "We started with one house," Josephine said to Nathan as they watched Sam and Maria settle into their new home. "Now we have 2, with a thriving ranch around them and 4 children who know how to work hard and love deeply. Not bad for a widow who lost everything in a fire." "You never lost everything," Nathan corrected gently. "You lost things, property, but you kept your courage and determination and hope. Those cannot be burned." Katie graduated from helping at her mother's school to taking over teaching entirely, as Josephine focused more on managing the ranch's business side and raising the twins. At 16, Katie was a natural educator, patient and creative in her teaching methods. She also continued working with horses, developing a reputation for being able to gentle even the most difficult animals. "I do not understand how you do it," Nathan told her, watching Katie work with a gelding that had been abused before they purchased him. The horse was skittish and aggressive, but under Katie's patient handling, he gradually relaxed. "You have a gift I cannot explain." "I just listen to them, Papa," Katie said simply. "They tell you what they need if you pay attention." This boy was hurt by humans, so he needs to learn we are not all cruel. It just takes time. In 1899, Sam and Maria welcomed their first child, a daughter they named Josephine Rose after both grandmothers. Nathan and Josephine became grandparents at 51 and 44 respectively, delighting in the role while still actively managing their ranch. "We are not old enough to be grandparents," Josephine protested, though she was smiling as she held baby Rose. "Speak for yourself," Nathan joked. "I feel every one of my 51 years in my knees." But despite his joking, Nathan was still vigorous and active, working alongside Sam and their employees to keep the ranch running smoothly. The horse operation had expanded to include breeding specifically for temperament and endurance, producing animals that were in high demand across Arizona territory and beyond. The twins, now 5 years old, were starting to show their own personalities and interests. James loved books and learning, already reading beyond his years and asking endless questions. Lucas preferred action, wanting to be outside working with animals and exploring the ranch. Katie took charge of their basic education, giving them lessons in the morning before they scattered to their various interests. As the new century dawned in 1900, the James Holloway Ranch celebrated both Christmas and the turn of the century with a large gathering. All the neighboring ranchers came, along with many of Josephine's former students who were now young adults making their own way in the world. Sam and Maria hosted in their house, while Nathan and Josephine held the overflow at the original house. Standing on the porch of the house she and Nathan had built together, Josephine looked out at the thriving community they had created. There were children running everywhere, adults talking and laughing, horses grazing peacefully in the corrals. It was everything she had never dared dream of during those dark days after the fire. Nathan came to stand beside her, slipping an arm around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" "About how far we have come," Josephine said. 24 years ago, I was standing in ashes with nothing. Now look at all this. A thriving ranch, 4 amazing children, a grandchild, students who have gone on to build their own lives. It is more than I ever imagined possible. "You built it," Nathan said. "Well, we built it together, but it started with your refusal to give up, to surrender to despair. Everything else came from that core of strength." "I could not have done any of it without you," Josephine said firmly. "You gave me the tools and the materials and the knowledge, but more than that, you gave me hope. You showed me that endings can become new beginnings, that loss does not have to mean defeat." Nathan pulled her closer. "I loved you from almost the first moment I saw you, standing there in those ruins, determined and terrified and refusing to break. I knew then you were someone special." "And I loved you for your kindness," Josephine replied, "for offering help without expecting anything in return, for treating me as a partner rather than a charity case, for building me up instead of tearing me down." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching their family and community celebrate. Sam emerged from his house carrying baby Rose, showing her off to admiring neighbors. Maria stood beside him, pregnant again though not yet showing. Katie was in deep conversation with one of the ranch hands, probably discussing horse training techniques. The twins were playing with other children, their laughter carrying clearly through the cool evening air. "This is what happiness looks like," Nathan said softly. "This moment right here, with all the people we love healthy and safe and gathered together." "It is perfect," Josephine agreed. "And it all started with you appearing at my burned property with an offer to help rebuild. You gave me back my life, Nathan. You gave me a future when I could see nothing but past." "No," Nathan corrected. "I gave you materials and labor. You gave yourself back your life by having the courage to accept help, the strength to work alongside me, and the wisdom to see possibility in ashes. I just got lucky enough to be there when you needed a partner." As the new century's first year unfolded, life on the ranch continued its steady rhythm. Sam and Maria had their second child, a son named Samuel Nathan Jr. Katie, now 19, was being courted by the son of a neighboring rancher, a young man who shared her love of horses and quiet competence. The twins started attending Katie's school formally, joining the dozen other students who came from surrounding ranches. Nathan, now in his early 50s, began teaching Sam more about the business side of the ranch, preparing him to eventually take over full management. But Nathan showed no signs of slowing down yet, still training horses and managing the breeding program with skilled hands and decades of experience. Josephine expanded her advocacy work, serving on a committee working to establish a proper school system in Tucson. Her own school had proved the need and value of education, and she was determined to see every child in the territory have access to learning regardless of their circumstances. One evening in the spring of 1902, after the day's work was done and the younger children were asleep, Nathan and Josephine sat on their porch as they had countless times before. The desert air was cool and sweet, carrying the scent of blooming flowers and distant rain. "I have been thinking about the future," Nathan said, "about what happens when we are too old to work the ranch anymore." "That is still years away," Josephine protested. "You are only 54 and I am just 47. We have plenty of working years left." "I know," Nathan agreed. "But it is worth planning ahead. I want to make sure everything is set up so Sam can take over smoothly when the time comes. And I want to ensure Katie and the twins are provided for as well." They talked long into the night, making plans and discussing options. The ranch was profitable enough now that they could afford to think about eventual retirement, maybe traveling to visit Nathan's sister in California, or simply spending more time with their growing family. "I want to see the ocean," Josephine said suddenly. "I have lived my entire life in Arizona territory, and I want to know what the Pacific looks like." "Then we will go," Nathan promised. "Maybe next year, once spring calving is done and the horses are sold. We can take a month, travel to California, visit Katie and her family." Katie had married her young man that winter, a fellow named Thomas Wright, who proved to be everything Josephine and Nathan had hoped for their daughter. He was kind and hardworking, treating Katie as an equal partner. They built a small house on the Wright ranch, but spent considerable time at the James Holloway spread, as Katie could not stay away from the horses for long. By 1903, Sam and Maria had 3 children and were successfully managing their portion of the ranch. Sam had his father's skill with horses combined with his mother's business sense, creating a formidable combination. Katie and Thomas were expecting their first child. The twins, now 9 years old, were growing into capable young people with distinct interests and abilities. Nathan and Josephine finally took their California trip that summer, traveling by rail to San Diego and then north to Los Angeles, where Nathan's sister lived. Katie was indeed thriving, running a successful boarding house with her husband and raising 4 children who were now all grown. Standing on the beach in San Diego, Josephine saw the Pacific Ocean for the first time and cried. It was so vast, so endless, so far beyond anything she had imagined. Nathan stood beside her, their hands clasped, both of them feeling very small against the immensity of sea and sky. "It makes our problems seem insignificant," Josephine said, "when you see something this big, this eternal." "Maybe," Nathan said. "Or maybe it reminds us that our small acts of kindness matter all the more because the world is so large and indifferent. We create meaning through love and family and helping each other. That is what matters." They returned to Arizona refreshed and recommitted to the life they had built. The ranch welcomed them back, familiar and beloved, and they settled into the comfortable routine of work and family. Over the next several years, their family continued to expand. Sam and Maria had 2 more children. Katie and Thomas had 3. The ranch added more land and more horses, becoming one of the largest operations in southern Arizona. The twins grew into young men, James heading to university in Tucson to study law while Lucas stayed on the ranch, discovering he had a gift for veterinary work, and beginning to study with the local animal doctor. In 1910, Nathan and Josephine celebrated their 29th wedding anniversary. Nathan was 62 now, his hair fully gray but his mind still sharp and his body still capable. Josephine was 55, still teaching occasionally, though she had officially retired from running the school. They sat together on their porch, watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of gold and crimson. Sam's house was visible in the distance, lights beginning to glow in the windows as his family settled in for the evening. Horses moved peacefully in the corrals. Somewhere a dog barked. The desert air was cooling rapidly as it always did after sundown. "I never imagined my life would turn out like this," Josephine said quietly. "After the fire, after Samuel died, I thought I had lost my chance at happiness. I thought I would spend the rest of my life alone, barely surviving." "But you did not," Nathan said. "You rebuilt, you thrived. You created something beautiful from ashes and loss." "We created something beautiful," Josephine corrected. "Neither of us could have done this alone. It took both of us, working together, believing in each other." Nathan took her hand, weathered and age-spotted now but still strong. "I would do it all again. Every nail hammered, every board lifted, every challenge faced, all of it just to end up here with you." "Even the hard parts?" Josephine asked. "The years when money was tight, when we worried about making it through winter. The illnesses and injuries and setbacks, especially those parts," Nathan said firmly. "Because they taught us we could survive anything as long as we faced it together. They made the good times sweeter because we knew how much we had struggled to achieve them." Josephine leaned her head on Nathan's shoulder, comfortable and content in a way that only came from decades of partnership. "I love you more today than I did 29 years ago when we married. I did not think that was possible, but it is true." "Love is like a house," Nathan said. "You build it slowly, brick by brick, board by board. Each shared experience adds to the structure. Each challenge overcome makes it stronger. Each year together adds another room, another story. We have been building our love for 34 years now, since the day I first rode down to your burned property. It is a solid structure that will stand for whatever time we have left." As the years passed into the second decade of the new century, Nathan began to slow down. He was not ill, just aging naturally, his body finally showing the wear of decades of hard physical labor. He passed more of the ranch work to Sam and Lucas, content to take on advisory roles and occasional light duties. Josephine remained active longer, still sharp-minded and energetic. She spent her days managing the ranch's business affairs, spoiling her growing number of grandchildren, and continuing her advocacy for education in the territory. She was invited to speak at gatherings, asked for advice by younger women, respected as a pioneer who had built something lasting. In 1915, Arizona finally achieved statehood, having been a territory since the land was acquired from Mexico. Nathan and Josephine attended the celebrations in Tucson, proud to have been part of building the region from rough frontier into an established state. "We have lived through remarkable times," Nathan observed watching the festivities. "From territory to state, from Apache wars to peaceful settlement, from scattered ranches to thriving communities. We helped build it," Josephine said proudly. "Not just us, but people like us. Ordinary folks who worked hard and looked after each other and refused to give up when things got difficult." That year, they celebrated their 34th wedding anniversary surrounded by family. Sam and Maria were there with their 6 children, some now married with children of their own. Katie and Thomas came with their 4 children and 2 grandchildren. James arrived from Tucson, where he was now a successful lawyer, bringing his wife and young son. Lucas was there with his fiancée, a woman who shared his love of animals and healing. The celebration was held at the original house, the one Nathan and Josephine had built together from ashes and hope. It had been expanded and improved over the years, but was still fundamentally the same structure, solid and enduring. Nathan looked around at the gathering, at the family they had created and the lives they had touched, and felt profound gratitude. "This is legacy," he said to Josephine. "Not just the land or the buildings or the business. This family, these people who carry forward what we taught them about hard work and kindness and never giving up. This is what lasts. Josephine squeezed his hand, tears of happiness in her eyes. We did well, did we not? That scared widow and the kind cowboy who helped her rebuild. We created something meaningful. We created something wonderful, Nathan corrected, and it will continue long after we are gone. Nathan passed away peacefully in his sleep in early 1917, just a few weeks after his 69th birthday. He simply did not wake up one morning, his heart having given out after nearly 7 decades of strong, steady beating. Josephine found him looking peaceful, almost smiling, and though her heart broke, she found comfort in knowing he had lived a full, happy life surrounded by love. The funeral was the largest anyone in the area had ever seen. Hundreds of people came to pay their respects. Ranchers Nathan had helped over the years, former students of Josephine's school, horse buyers from across the Southwest, neighbors and friends and family. They filled the church in Tucson and spilled out into the street, all there to honor a man who had lived his values of kindness, hard work, and helping others. Josephine stood at the gravesite, supported by her children, and spoke about the man who had saved her from despair. Nathan Holloway appeared at my lowest moment and offered help without expecting anything in return. He taught me that endings can be beginnings, that loss does not have to mean defeat. He showed me what true partnership looks like, building our life together brick by brick, decision by decision, day by day. He was my husband, my partner, my best friend, and the love of my life. The world is a poorer place without him, but richer for the years he spent in it. After Nathan's death, Josephine continued living in their house, the one they had built together. Sam and Maria urged her to move in with them, but she refused. "This house holds all my memories of building a life with your father," she told Sam. "I am not ready to leave it yet. When the time comes, I will know. But for now, this is where I need to be." She kept herself busy managing the business side of the ranch, spending time with her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and writing. She had always kept detailed journals, and now she compiled them into a memoir about building a life in Arizona territory, about loss and rebuilding, about finding love after tragedy. The memoir was published in 1919 and became surprisingly popular, resonating with people who had faced their own losses and challenges. Josephine received letters from all over the country, people thanking her for showing that it was possible to overcome devastation and build something new. "Your story gave me hope," one letter read. "I lost everything in a flood last year, and I thought my life was over. But reading about how you rebuilt from ashes, how you accepted help and worked hard and created something wonderful, it inspired me to try again. Thank you." Josephine was deeply moved by the letters and responded to as many as she could, offering encouragement and sharing what wisdom she had gained over 7 decades of living. She lived to see women gain the right to vote, lived to see Arizona grow from rough frontier to established state, lived to see her grandchildren and great-grandchildren build their own lives and families. She remained sharp and engaged until the very end, reading voraciously and staying involved in her community. On a warm summer evening in 1925, Josephine James Holloway passed away at the age of 70. Surrounded by her children and grandchildren in the house she and Nathan had built together almost 50 years earlier. She simply closed her eyes and stopped breathing, peacefully letting go of a life well lived. She was buried next to Nathan on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a headstone that read, "Josephine James Holloway, 1855–1925. She rose from ashes to build something lasting. Beloved wife, mother, grandmother, teacher, and friend." The James Holloway Ranch continued to thrive under Sam's management and eventually passed to his children and grandchildren. The original house was preserved as a family landmark, maintained exactly as it had been when Nathan and Josephine lived there. Future generations would visit it, walking through rooms where great-great-grandparents had lived and loved, touching walls that still stood strong from that long-ago rebuilding. The story of the widow who lost everything in a fire and the cowboy who rebuilt her life one brick at a time became family legend, passed down through generations as an example of resilience, kindness, and the transformative power of love. It was a reminder that even in our darkest moments, hope remains, that acts of kindness ripple forward through time, that partnership and hard work can overcome any obstacle, and that sometimes the most beautiful things rise from ashes.